Hello, thank you for joining me this morning or whenever you're getting to watch this. I'm going to be sharing with you about Advanced Care Planning, Advanced Care Planning 101. Advanced Care Planning, sometimes you'll hear ACP, again, Advanced Care Planning. And it's an important thing to talk about in your personal life business. We're going to talk about exactly what it is, why it's important, and I'll be sharing some resources for you to find so that you can go through and get your own advanced care planning completed. So imagine a situation where you or someone you love has a medical situation where communication is not possible. Maybe it's an accident, car accident, sporting accident, perhaps a fall has caused this. Perhaps there's a sudden change in your health. Even chronic illness can take a change unexpectedly, or there's a complication from a surgery or a treatment, and there's significant problems. When something like this happens, decisions need to be made, and usually in a quick manner. Whether you're the patient or a loved one of the patient, those decisions can be made more easily if everyone involved had talked about their wishes and goals before the situation arose. Advanced care planning helps people think and talk about healthcare treatment options they would want in the future if they were unable to speak for themselves. Advanced care planning is a process. It's not just the document. At its core, advanced care planning is 3 questions, what it boils down to. First question, who would you want to make decisions for you if you couldn't make them yourself? What would be the goals of treatment if you lost the ability to know who you were with, or where you were? What spiritual, personal, and cultural values would you like your loved ones and healthcare team to know about? Advanced care planning, again, is a process. Often people mistake advanced care planning thinking that it's all about that piece of paper, that form, that healthcare directive. But really, the paper, as important as it is just a part of it. A big piece of this is the conversation and the thought process put into the planning. It's important, as I said, because none of us really know what's going to happen today or tomorrow. Sudden medical emergencies can happen at any time, at any age, and they will take us by surprise. Thankfully, there are a lot of resources available to help with this process and to think through this and to fill out the form. And that's what we're going to do today, and I applaud you for starting this process today with me. Thinking about and talking about advanced care planning is an important piece of this process, like I said. But if you do it by yourself without involving the other people in your life who would be part of your care team, then it's not helpful. If you write things down on a directive but you never share it with anyone, they might not necessarily understand your intent of what you have written. In fact, they may not even know you have written something down, or they may not know where that important document can be found if needed. So a conversation is a very important piece of this process. In life, sometimes you've got to do stuff you just because it's the right thing to do. And often it's uncomfortable. And usually it is inconvenient, but it's almost always worth it. And that's the case here. So one thing I'm certain of, life is full of uncertainties. So we can just kind of go along, or we can be proactive. Prudence would say that we can mitigate the effects of those uncertainties by being informed and by being proactive. Advanced care planning is a gift to our loved ones. When you think about it, if you are in a situation where you can't participate in the discussion, how will your loved ones and your healthcare team know what's important to you if you've never thought about it or shared it with them? Well, today we want to give your voice to your medical choice. Advanced care planning is a way for you to always have a part in that conversation, even if you cannot physically participate. So again, at its core, advanced care planning revolves around these 3 questions, and we're going to look more closely at each of them now. So we'll begin with, who would you want to make decisions for you if you couldn't make them yourself? This would be a legally designated person who's going to speak on your behalf if you are unable to do so. In Minnesota, this person is called an agent, your healthcare agent. Perhaps you've heard other terms for it, such as a surrogate, a proxy, substitute decision maker, a healthcare power of attorney. And on that point, make sure that you don't confuse power of attorney with a healthcare power of attorney. They're 2 separate things. But as far as a healthcare agent and these other terms, it is describing the person that is legally designated to make healthcare decisions for you should you be unable to make them for yourself or communicate them. Often people choose their spouse or perhaps an adult daughter, but usually people don't put a lot of thought into whether or not the person is really best suited for this role. So we're going to talk about 5 things to consider when you're choosing your agent. So number 1 is, do you trust this person? Is it someone who knows you well? You will want to talk to the person you're considering to be your agent. Make sure that they know and agree that they will be your agent. It's very important. Sometimes people would rather not be the designated agent. You might be surprised. This person in your life might rather be the person that sits at your bedside and holds your hand and not be the designated decision maker. So it's important that you trust this person, that they know you well, and that this person does agree to this decision-making role. Secondly, will this person honor your wishes even if they don't personally agree with them? We often hear that while a patient has been very clear about choosing not to be kept alive on machines, for example, an adult child or the children may feel like they're not ready to let that person go, which is completely understandable, but you have to make sure that in a situation of treatment, if there's still difficult decision to make, that person will be able to follow through with the choices that you have stated. So you want to be sure that they clearly understand why you made the choices that you made and that they're prepared to follow them if they need to, even if they don't agree or it's uncomfortable and difficult to make those choices. Remember again, the conversation piece is very important to this process, and that's a great example of why. So thirdly, is this person emotionally strong enough to make those choices in a difficult time? Now, this isn't being something where you're being judgmental about this person. It's making a good judgment. It's recognizing and acknowledging how a person responds to a stressful situation. People respond differently, so you just have to keep this in mind, because your agent could be called upon to make some very difficult decisions in a very stressful and emergent situation. So think about it. You are lying in a hospital bed, unable to interact and communicate in a potentially life or death decisions that need to be made. Some people can rise to those occasions. It's a part of who they are. Other people, it's a very difficult time. They might have the deer in the headlight kind of a look. It's hard for them to focus on those situations. It's just part of how they are made. So some people do well in those fast-paced situations. For others, it's a difficult thing. So knowing, as you're choosing your healthcare advocate, knowing that about the person you're considering is very important. So if there were a tough situation, you want to make sure it's a person who would most likely be able to act and follow through in that situation. So fourthly, can this person stand up for you if a family member disagrees? Can you imagine family members disagreeing? And when there's situations where there's fear involved and there's stress involved, it can complicate relationships even in the best of families. So you want to keep this in mind. So I invite you to think about your own family. Is there someone in your family tree who tends to voice strong opinions, whether they're asked for or not? Well, your agent is the person that you have chosen to stand up for you and your wishes, and they need to be able to do that. And a way you can help them if that situation were to occur is to beforehand talk to that outspoken family member beforehand in the part of the conversation process. Hey, by the way, I'm filling this out. I want you to know who my agent is. They know my wishes. I'm trusting you'll support. Just having that talked through ahead of time, should a situation arise, would just make it that much more smooth, and for your whole family. It would decrease the stress for both your agent and the rest of your family as they attend to your immediate needs. So if you can take away some of that uncertainty, it's just very helpful and calming. Fifth one on the list, fifth consideration, is this person likely to be nearby and available in case of an emergency? This is more of a convenience, but it doesn't mean in today's world that it has to be someone that's right in your town or even in your state. Thankfully, we have technology now, but it must be someone who can engage quickly in communication, whether it be by technology or, if needed, can get quickly to your bedside. So that is the fifth thing to keep in mind when you're choosing your healthcare agent. So now into our second question. What would be the goals of treatment if you permanently lost the ability to meaningfully know who you were with, and where you were? This is a complicated one, so stay with me. Another way of looking at it is, do you want life-prolonging measures, such as CPR? If your healthcare team agrees, your chances of survival and recuperating are extremely slim. Well, considering this, again, this is why it's so important to be informed, and I'll tell you more about how to get resources and information that can help you with this discussion piece. But say, for instance, when we're talking about this, your family's been told that your probabilities of recovery are probably slim, as in like a 5 to 10%. And even that, if you survive that, what status you will have at that time is very questionable. So that's the scenario we're looking at for this, for the sake of thinking things through. So you want to consider, how would you want your agent to steer your care at this time? If this were the situation, would you want your desire, your wish for them to say, hey, whatever they give you to try it. I just would want you to keep going at it and trying whatever the next thing is that the medical team can offer you. Or are you at a place in your life and your wishes where you would say, boy, if that was the situation, it's that slim, please turn the corner over to comfort care. Keep me comfortable, give me whatever quality there is, but don't keep doing new treatment after new treatment. Now, it's a very hard question to consider, but it's a helpful thing to focus on now. What gives life meaning now is going to help inform your agent and your healthcare team as to what decisions to make should you be in this situation. So things included in thinking about for this part of it would be, what's a good day for you? What do you think about when you think about the future? What helps you to go through difficult times? And examples of this would be, for some people, it's interacting with a lot of people. For some people, having a quiet environment is what they enjoy. Maybe they have a pet they're very fond of, and having interactions with their pet is an important part of their life. Maybe it's spending time in nature, listening to the music, dining on special foods. All of these things about your personhood are helpful for your agent and your healthcare team to know, because they will help inform what kind of treatment decisions that will be made. So for a lot of us, there are several things that we fear too that we could consider. If we fear about the future or fear about a serious illness, some people are afraid of great pain and the challenge of controlling that. Some people are more concerned about what would be the financial ramifications should I have a long-term illness. How would that affect my family? For many of us, the thought of losing control, of being dependent on others, is something that would be challenging. Understanding these things that concern us or worry us and talking about those over with our agent and talking about those with our loved ones are important pieces too that will help inform any further medical choices. And it can alleviate fears. Just taking those out of the box and talking about them, even though they're difficult at the beginning, can be helpful and bring peace in the long run. So we encourage you to think about, too, how you cope with situations now. How do you cope with stress now? For some, it's talking things over with other people. For others, it's time alone where you need to process things through mentally, emotionally. Many people find that their faith helps and that prayer helps them, meditation helps. For others, it might be massage or other practices of relaxation. All of these things together can be helpful for your agent and your healthcare team to know as they look at the available options for your care. And really, no matter what your status of health is, these are helpful to know. So educating yourself about the most common medical choices that arise in a crisis, as well as understanding the cost and benefits of these choices, is a very good start. Then talk about them. Talk about different scenarios that you've experienced in your own life when people have had medical crises, or you've seen something on the news. These are good things to interact with your agent about and your loved ones, and talk about what would you want in that situation. For instance, just resourcing and information, did you know that the survival rate of bystander CPR, so that's where there's a situation where somebody needs CPR and you're not in a hospital setting, the survival rate is about 45%. This is where it's happening outside of the hospital again, but when it's in hospital, the survival rate is actually about 40%. And if you take that statistic, only 10 to 20% of people survive long enough to be discharged, and that's without qualifying their quality of life once they leave. So just understanding and knowing some of the statistics that are out there can help inform you too, as far as what kind of choices you want to make. And to find out more about that, you can go to the honoringchoices.org website, and there's a lot of information there. And as you can see on the screen, there's a place you can go to learn about medical terms. So if you're in a situation, you can understand the terms that you might be hearing right off the bat. You can find out more about what does it mean about CPR? What does it mean if I need help breathing? What does it mean if I need help with hydration? What are all of these things? And they give you very good information, and they just added a whole section on COVID-19 specific as far as what treatments you might have to encounter or go through, and to help with decisions even for that. So again, all of those are at honoringchoices.org, and at that site you can also find the healthcare directive forms. There's a short form, there's a long form, there's forms in different languages, there's large print forms that are available there, so you have many choices depending on where you're at or how much information you want to write down or not. But again, the big piece of the puzzle is that you have had the conversation behind what's on the form. So we're on our third question. What spiritual, personal, and cultural values would you like your loved ones and your health care team to know about? This is really getting even deeper into your personhood. This is about what makes you you. So if your healthcare team knows what your spiritual, personal, and cultural values are ahead of time, they can work more closely to accommodate them for you. If you have written down in your healthcare directive who your faith leader is and how to contact them, it's easier to bring them into the circle of care. Sometimes people worry about mentioning personal preferences because they think, well, it might come off silly that, this is something I would want. But if it's important to you, it's going to be important to your health care team, and it's going to be important to your agent. For instance, we have an example of one woman who felt silly to say it, but she really wanted her hair to be done and her face washed if she couldn't communicate otherwise, and there were visitors coming. She would just like to know that would be getting done. And so she shared that with her healthcare agent and her loved ones, and they were able to do that. They would get there before any other visitors and make sure Mom's hair was done and her face was washed and her bedding was nice. And that really served a great purpose to her loved ones as well, because they knew they were doing something that was important to their mom during that difficult time. So it's a gift that you can give to your loved ones in this communication piece by telling them what is important to you. Maybe it's important to you to just have a few people around your bedside. Or maybe it's important to you that you have your extended family in the room with you. Those are personal preferences. Again, what's important to you is what matters here. Sometimes people are often feel awkward or guilty about saying, you know what, I would be fine with people being in the room and telling stories, and even if they're laughing, if they're telling stories about life and they're enjoying that, I'm okay with that. Communicate that to give the freedom to your family to be able to do that. So finally, on culture. Many people immediately go to cultural language or nationality, which is a part of it, but culture is even bigger than that. It can get, if it's a situation where you have your native language you would like spoken in that time, make sure that you talk about that. If there are things related to your cultural heritage that you want brought into your treatment, into your room, you want to make sure to include that. It just brings a lot of the personal into it. I know for one of my loved ones, baseball was a big thing. And it happened that when my loved one was in an end-of-life situation, baseball season was on. So guess what was on TV? Baseball was on a lot of the time during that. And we just knew that person, even though in an unconscious state, would know that was on and bring a level of comfort. So again, looking at spiritual, things you might consider things like specific music to be played or sung, scripture verses that might be read, leaders, spiritual leaders that might be called, if there are any special rituals or traditions or ceremonies you would want to be held. Someone said, I am a spiritual person, but I know that my family isn't. So I am giving them information about my faith practice preferences that have great meaning to me, that bring me comfort, as well as informing them about who I'd like to have a part of the spiritual care. Another person was saying, if it turns out that my death was caused directly or indirectly by the hand of another, I ask that my family and loved ones would forgive that person. So those are a few examples. On the personal end, someone might say, I really, 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 really don't like pain, and that would be an important piece to be taken care of. Another person would say, I want my 3 children to work together to make all the decisions. And if they can't, and it's just too difficult, here's who I would want them to bring into the situation. Another person added to theirs, I'm afraid of lying in bed, unable to communicate or move, and people will come to visit me and my hair will be a mess, like I mentioned earlier. These are all personal things, and they're important to know. Nothing's too silly. We're all unique individuals. And again, with culture, perhaps if it's needed, maybe interpreters and resources be available if there is a preferred language. There might be a request for traditional beliefs, fears, or values related to medical care. There may be food, music, or other items, traditional or cultural, to be brought into the situation. Another person in this part of it stated that it's important to allow my entire circle of support to be involved. Another person added to theirs, I want my family to stand around my bed and share memories and laugh. For me, another loved one and difficult time, they enjoyed music, and they had and they had been a part of a singing group, and it was important for them to have that community, and that music and their singing group came and stood around their bedside and sang for them. So now, let's imagine you have gone through this process. You've had the conversation, you filled out the form, you've had it legally signed, and Maybe you today are listening and you already have this document. Either way, this isn't a static thing. This isn't something to not just file and leave there. Put it on your calendar to reevaluate regularly. And for sure, you want to take this to heart, H-E-A-R-T. This is to know, when should I revisit this? You should revisit it if you have a change in your health status. If you have an event occur that would impact what you have already written. You're changing in age. One thing that medical crisis at 22, you might have a different perspective at 22 than when you're 82 in what kind of outcomes and what kind of care that you would like to receive at that point in your life. If your relationship changes, if it's a relationship, a marriage relationship changes, your relationship with the agent that you had changes in any way, maybe your healthcare agent moves overseas or something that geographically it's difficult, anything like that. And thinking. Perhaps over the course of even a year, you've had experiences or seen things in the news that affected your thinking about what kinds of procedures or treatments you might want, or you've learned about new scenarios that have informed your thinking and you've changed your mind on something. You would want to then do a new document. The document you already have completed, you cannot amend or add to. You would need to get a new document filled out and then again signed to make it legally. And as I talk about signing it, there is Minnesota law. Again, this is a legal document, so Minnesota law does ascribe. So you need to use the right form, which again, you can find the forms at honoringchoices.org, have them filled out, and then to have them legal, they must be signed. And you will see here that your document has to be in writing, has to be dated, and you, as would be called the principal, have to sign it. And then to make it finally legal, it would be your signature, and then you could have the signature of a notary public or a notary, or you can have your signature and then two other witnesses. As long as those two witnesses, neither of them is your agent or someone who's caring for you, a healthcare professional that's caring for you, cannot sign. So again, this is a legal document. It's important for anyone 18 years or older. A lot of times we think of document like this being for us old people or seniors, but if you're 18 years old or older, I encourage you to have this done. If you're single, single parent, a young married with children, have this document done. We have so many things going on in our medical world today that we're at a place where it's important to have this document filed. And to note, we have a lot of people that are snowbirds and moved and go away for the winter and things like that. So questions on that, understand that this healthcare directive, if you are a resident of Minnesota, then you would have this filled out for Minnesota. So you need to have this filled out in your state of residence. Now, if a medical crisis would occur when you're in a different state, it is not a legal document in a different state. However, I encourage you to keep this document with you in your car or in your luggage or your purse or wallet, because if a situation arose, you can pull that out, and in most states, they'll usually honor it, but just know it isn't a legal document there. But I still highly encourage you to have that with you. So be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. This is not easy. These aren't easy things to talk about, but in today's world, they're really almost necessary. And this is a loving thing to do, again, and it takes a lot of courage. Love involves having courage. So today, again, we are blessed with many medical choices, but you can get a bunch of things thrown at you really quick in a medical emergency. So it's important to be proactive, have had these conversations. You can either have one sit down, we're going to talk about this, or make it a part of regular conversations. You see something in the news, you hear something happen to somebody, bring that into the conversation around the dinner table or the breakfast table. So having this is an important piece of being a loving thing that you can do, not only for yourself, but for those around you. And say you do this, and may you never have to use it. That would be awesome. Even at that, You would have had these wonderful, deep conversations of understanding yourself better, understanding your loved ones better, more intimate communication with loved ones. You'd be modeling a responsible adult life in taking care of your adult personal business. You'd be communicating what values you have. Really, either way, it's great. It's good outcome. So if you want to learn more, here are some resources. Again, honoringchoices.org. Honoringchoices.org is where you can find all of those forms and information. And then if you want to look further, if you're a reader, here's a list of readers. If you want, you can just freeze frame this place, slide on this presentation and jot these down. But these Honoring Choices, we have a local group called Honoring Choices of Park Rapids, Walker, and surrounding areas. And what we're doing is offering facilitation and help that is free. Some places will charge you to help you with this process and getting through this. And we want you to know that we offer this help for free. So you can contact us, and in the Walker area, the contact number is 218-547-1897, and I'll have these numbers on the next slide for you. That will bring you to Calvary Church in Walker's office. They will take your information, and then they will let the Honoring Choices facilitators in your area know, and then they will get hold of you. If you're in the Park Rapids area, you can call the Living at Home number, which is 218-732-3137, and they will again get hold of us, and we'll have a facilitator contact you. Now, a facilitator can come and meet with you one-on-one, or meet with you and the healthcare agent that you've chosen, or they can come and give a presentation to a group and walk through the whole process of filling out your healthcare directive. We also have presenters that are available to come and present to your group once we open things up after move through this COVID situation, or we are available to do it on a Zoom meeting if that is something that would be helpful. But again, we want to help give your voice to medical choice. So I thank you for joining me today. If you have questions even about it, again, you can call either of the numbers that you see on the screen here at the bottom. Let us know if it's just questions, and we'll have someone get back to you. And again, honoringchoices.org is an important place for you to go. And again, I thank you for joining me on this presentation. And I encourage you to follow through with the conversation. The process is important. Complete the form. Get the form legally done. Get the form filed with your practitioner, your healthcare system, and then keep it up to date with your loved ones. Thank you.